I didn't lose my marriage in an argument. I lost it in a sentence. One I didn't even argue with. That's the twist. I agreed. Before I tell you how that sentence changed everything, do me a favor real quick. Hit subscribe, tap like, and leave a comment if you've ever heard words that sounded harmless but rewired your entire life. Trust me, by the end of this story, you'll understand why that matters. Now let me take you back to the night it all began. It was a Tuesday, the kind of forgettable weekday people rush through. Except I'd been planning this one for 2 weeks. I'd booked a corner booth at a steakhouse called Copper Grill after my wife, Laura, casually mentioned she wanted to try their ribeye. I took off early from my warehouse shift, showered, put on the navy button-down she bought me last Christmas, and stopped by a florist for white roses, the kind she liked to post online with captions about little joys. We'd been married 3 years. Together 5. I thought that meant something solid. Laura had been distant lately. Always busy. Her book club, yoga studio, weekend art workshops. Every time I suggested we spend time together, there was a schedule conflict. But I told myself this dinner would reset us. Couples drift. They come back. That's how marriage works. At least that's what I believed. She walked into the restaurant wearing a blue dress that made heads turn. I remember thinking how lucky I was. We ordered wine, shared an appetizer, talked about her recent promotion at the marketing firm. Everything felt normal, comfortable, familiar. Then dessert arrived. She set her fork down, looked me straight in the eye, and said calmly, "I need you to understand something. Being married doesn't mean you're my top priority." I didn't choke. I didn't shout. I didn't laugh. I just froze. The restaurant buzzed around us, glasses clinking, couples smiling, but it felt like the sound had been turned down on my life. I asked what she meant, keeping my voice steady. She leaned back, relaxed. Too relaxed. "It means I'm not going to drop everything just because you want time together. I have my career, my friends, my goals. You can't expect me to revolve my life around being your wife." I had 100 responses lined up. All the times I'd rearranged my schedule. The plans I'd canceled. The way I'd always treated our marriage like the center of the map. But instead, I nodded. "You're right," I said. "Priorities are personal." She blinked. She'd expected a fight. "I'm glad you understand," she said. That I paid the bill. The drive home was silent. She scrolled through her phone, thumbs moving fast, like nothing important had happened. But something had happened, to me. That night, while she went through her skincare routine, I sat on the edge of the bed and replayed her words. She hadn't just talked about time. She'd told me, clearly, that being my wife wasn't important enough to influence her choices. For 3 years, I thought we were building something together. Turns out, I'd been building alone. Laura climbed into bed in silk pajamas, kissed my cheek, and reminded me she had an early meeting with the design team. The lamp clicked off. She fell asleep fast. I stared at the ceiling, wide awake, listening to her breathe. And that's when I made the decision that changed everything. Not out of anger, not out of revenge, out of clarity that if marriage wasn't her priority, then it didn't have to be mine either. That I didn't know what that would look like yet. I just knew I was done living like the only person playing for the team. And that was only the beginning. The next morning didn't feel dramatic. That was the unsettling part. No slammed doors. No tense silence. Just the quiet clink of a coffee mug against the counter and the hum of the refrigerator. Like every other weekday morning of my life, Laura rushed through the kitchen in heels, hair still damp, juggling her phone and a travel mug. She talked about a charity event her book club was hosting Saturday night. Something about silent auctions and guest speakers. Normally, I would have already said yes. Normally, I would have rearranged whatever plans I had, if I even had any, to be there, smiling beside her, playing the supportive husband. This time I just nodded and said, "Hope it goes well." She paused mid-step and looked at me over her phone. "You'll be there, right?" I took a slow sip of coffee. "I'll have to check my schedule." The words sounded strange coming out of my mouth. Honest, neutral, uncommitted. She studied my face for a second, then shrugged. "Okay, let me know." And just like that, she was gone. The house felt different after the door closed. Not empty, lighter, like something heavy had been moved without me realizing how much space it took up. That afternoon, Mike, a guy from work, asked if I wanted to grab drinks Friday after our shift. He'd been asking for months. I'd been saying no for months. Friday nights were usually reserved, sometimes for date night, sometimes because Laura had something planned, sometimes because she just wanted me home. This time I said yes. He laughed, genuinely surprised. You sure your wife won't mind? I smiled without thinking. Priorities are personal. Friday came fast. Instead of asking Laura what she wanted to do for dinner, I told her I already had plans. She looked confused, maybe even a little offended, but she didn't argue. That surprised me more than anything. 3 hours at a neighborhood bar later, surrounded by noise and laughter and conversations that had nothing to do with budgets, schedules, or expectations, I felt like someone had handed me back a piece of myself I didn't know I'd lost. I talked sports. I laughed too loud. I stayed longer than planned. When I got home, Laura was on the couch with a glass of wine, watching a reality show. She asked how my evening was without looking away from the screen. I said it was good. She said hers was fine. That was it. No tension, no accusations. Just two people sharing a space instead of a life. The next change I made wasn't social. It was quiet, administrative, almost boring on the surface. While Laura was at yoga that weekend, I called my insurance agent and scheduled an appointment. On Monday afternoon, I sat in his office and signed paperwork that removed my wife as the beneficiary on my life insurance policy. I split it between my parents and my younger brother, Tom. The agent asked if I was sure. I said I was. Walking out of that office, I felt something unexpected. Not guilt, not fear, but relief. Like I'd finally stopped assuming someone else would be there just because they always had been. Over the next couple of weeks, small shifts became habits. When Laura mentioned a weekend trip with her book club, I didn't automatically block off my calendar. I made my own plans. When her yoga studio hosted a fundraiser dinner, I declined and went to a baseball game with friends instead. One night, as I adjusted my tie before heading out, she said, "You've been going out a lot lately." "Yeah," I said calmly. "It's nice reconnecting." "I thought we could stay in tonight," she added. "Order takeout. Watch a movie. That sounds great for you." I replied, grabbing my keys. "I'll probably be home around 11. She stared at me, genuinely puzzled. "Since when do you choose friends over spending time with me?" I turned to face her, careful to keep my voice even. "Since you explained that marriage doesn't make spouses each other's top priority." She opened her mouth, then closed it. No argument. Just silence. I wasn't angry. I wasn't trying to make a point. I was simply living by the rules she'd laid out. And somewhere along the way, without meaning to, I realized something unsettling. I was happier than I'd been in months. Not because my marriage was improving, but because I'd stopped shrinking my life to fit inside someone else's priorities. 3 weeks after that dinner at Copper Grill, the real shift happened, not in how I spent my evenings, but in how I thought about the future. It crept up on me one quiet afternoon while I was sitting at the kitchen table, flipping through a stack of mail and realizing how much of my life was built around the word we. Joint accounts, joint plans, joint dreams. And yet, the more I replayed Laura's words in my head, the clearer it became. If our marriage wasn't a priority to her, why was I planning my future like it was a shared mission? The thought didn't make me angry. It made me methodical. I scheduled a meeting with our financial advisor, Richard, and framed it as a routine check-in. I didn't tell Laura. I didn't feel like I needed permission anymore. During that meeting, I asked questions I'd never asked before. What portion of our retirement savings came from my contributions? What would it look like if I separated my investments? How quickly could changes take effect? Richard raised an eyebrow but stayed professional. By the time I left his office, half of my retirement contributions were redirected into an individual account with my name on it alone. Not hidden, not secret, just mine. When the paperwork arrived in the mail a few days later, Laura noticed immediately. She stood in the living room holding the envelope like it was something sharp. "What's this?" she asked. "Account updates," I said, still working on my laptop. "What kind of updates?" she pressed. She opened the envelope before I answered. I could feel her eyes scanning the pages, her breathing changing. "You moved money," she said slowly. "Half of it. My contributions," I corrected, "into an individual account." Her voice tightened. "But we're married. We plan these things together." I finally looked up at her, keeping my expression calm. "According to you, marriage doesn't make us each other's priority." The room went very quiet. "That's not what I meant," she said. "What did you mean?" I asked. She struggled for an answer, opening and closing her mouth like she was searching for a sentence that had already slipped away. There wasn't one. She'd said what she'd said. I was just taking it seriously. Over the next few days, the tension grew. Not loud, not explosive, but constant. Laura started asking questions she hadn't bothered with before. Where was I going? When would I be home? Who was I meeting? 5 weeks after that dinner, the comments started. "You're never home anymore. We haven't eaten together in days." I'd respond the same way every time. Calm, polite. "I'm just following your advice about priorities." I could see it wearing on her. The confident woman who'd declared independence now checked her phone constantly when I didn't respond right away. She lingered in doorways when I was getting ready to leave, like she wanted to ask permission but didn't know how. The breaking point came on a Thursday night. I was buttoning my shirt to meet an old college friend, Jason, who was in town for business. Laura sat on the bed with her laptop open, pretending to work. "Another night out?" she asked, too casually. "Yeah, haven't seen him in a couple of years." "What about me?" she asked. That I paused, shirt half buttoned. "What about you?" "Well, I'm here," she said. "We could order pizza. Watch that show we never finished." I reached for my jacket. "You still can." "I want you here," she said quietly. That was new. "That's nice," I replied. "But I already made plans." "Cancel them." I stopped and really looked at her. She wasn't angry. She wasn't defensive. She looked uncertain, vulnerable in a way I hadn't seen in months. "Why would I cancel?" I asked. "Because I'm your wife," she said. "Right." I let the silence sit. "Marriage doesn't make you my top priority. You explained that to me." She flinched like I'd struck her. "That's not fair," she said. "What's not fair?" I asked. "I'm living exactly how you said we should live." She had no response, just a tight swallow and a look that said she was losing something she didn't realize she could lose. As I grabbed my keys, she asked softly, "Can we talk when you get back?" "If you're still awake," I said. Dinner with Jason was easy. Familiar. He told me about his job, his recent breakup, the old days when we thought we had everything figured out. At one point he leaned back and said, "You seem different, more relaxed." I almost laughed. When I got home around 10, Laura was still awake, sitting on the couch with a glass of wine, phone face down beside her. She looked at me like she'd been waiting for hours. "How was dinner?" she asked. "Good," I said. "How was your evening?" She hesitated. "Boring." And for the first time since that night at the restaurant, I realized something had shifted, not in me, but in her. When I sat down across from Laura that night, I didn't choose the couch like I used to. I took the armchair instead. It felt symbolic, even if I didn't say it out loud. Space had become the new language between us. She studied me for a long moment, fingers wrapped tightly around her glass. "You're angry with me," she said. "I'm not angry," I replied honestly. "Then what is this?" She gestured at the space between us, at the quiet, at the way our lives had started orbiting separately. "You're punishing me." I leaned back, choosing my words carefully. "I'm protecting myself." "From what?" she asked, her voice thinner now. "From being the only person in this marriage who treats it like a marriage." Her hand shook slightly as she set the glass down. "That's not true." I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. "When was the last time you changed your plans for me?" I asked. "When was the last time you chose time with me over something else you wanted to do?" The silence stretched. She looked down at her hands. She couldn't answer because we both knew the truth. I work hard, she said finally. I have goals. I can't just drop everything. I never asked you to drop everything, I said. I asked you to include me. There's a difference. Tears welled up, but she brushed them away quickly, like she was embarrassed by them. I didn't mean it the way you took it. Then how did you mean it? I asked. She hesitated. I meant that I'm my own person. And now, I said quietly, so am I. She looked at me like she was seeing me for the first time. Is this how it's going to be? Are we just roommates? I don't know, I said honestly. You set the rules. I'm just living by them. I want to change the rules, she said suddenly. That caught me off guard. Why? Because I miss you. I held her gaze. Or you miss having someone who always makes you the priority without asking for the same in return. That's not what I miss, she whispered. Then what do you miss? She stared at the floor for a long time before answering. I miss feeling like we're a team. I stood up slowly. We can't be a team when only one person is playing. I headed toward the stairs, but she called after me. Where are you going? To bed. I've got an early morning. With who? She asked, half joking, half afraid. To the gym, I said. Apparently, personal priorities come first. That weekend, the tension finally exploded. It was Sunday morning. I was in the kitchen making coffee, scrolling through my phone, when Laura stormed in wearing an oversized shirt she'd slept in. Her hair was a mess, her eyes wild. I feel invisible to you, she shouted, slamming her hand on the counter. I looked up calmly. Good morning to you too. Don't act like this is normal, she snapped. We've been together 5 years, married for 3, and now you treat me like I barely exist. I set my mug down. Interesting choice of words. What's that supposed to mean? You feel invisible, I said. But weren't you the one who said marriage doesn't make me your top priority? Her face flushed. That doesn't mean I want to be ignored. I'm not ignoring you, I said. I'm treating you exactly how you asked to be treated, as an independent person with her own priorities. You're twisting my words. Am I? I asked, because I remember them pretty clearly. She started pacing, running her hands through her hair. This is ridiculous. You're acting like a child. I shook my head. I'm acting like an adult who learned an important lesson. What lesson? She snapped. That priorities go both ways. She stopped pacing. What does that mean? It means you can't demand to be someone's priority while refusing to make them yours. I never said you weren't important to me, she said. You said you wouldn't drop anything to spend time with me, I replied. You said I couldn't expect you to revolve your life around being my husband. That's different, she muttered. How? I asked. She couldn't answer. I care about you, she said finally. I just care about myself too. And now, I said calmly, so do I. She wiped angry tears from her face. I miss my husband. Your husband is still here, I said. He's just not your backup plan anymore. This isn't how marriage works. You're right, I said. Marriage is supposed to be 2 people choosing each other, not one person doing all the choosing. She leaned against the counter, shoulders shaking. I just wanted my independence. And you have it, I said. Congratulations. The room went quiet again, but this time it wasn't peaceful. It was heavy with realization. Neither of us spoke for a long time. And for the first time, I could see it clearly in her eyes. She finally understood what it felt like to come second. When I came back from the gym that Sunday, the house felt different again, but not lighter this time. Heavier. Like the air itself was waiting for something to break. Laura was sitting at the kitchen table with her laptop open and a stack of papers spread out in front of her. She'd showered, changed clothes, and brushed her hair, which was unusual for a quiet Sunday morning. Her eyes were still puffy, but sharper now. Focused. We need to talk, she said. I grabbed a bottle of water from the fridge and sat across from her. About what? She slid a paper toward me. About this. It was a printout of our joint checking account. You moved $12,000 into your personal account last month, she said. My money, I replied. The money I earned. Yes, but we always discussed big financial decisions together. I took a long drink of water, then met her eyes. We discussed things together when we were building a shared future. You made it clear that wasn't the priority anymore. She pulled out another document, hands shaking slightly. And this, you removed me from your life insurance. That's correct. What if something happens to you? She asked, panic creeping into her voice. Then my parents and my brother will be taken care of, I said. The people who actually prioritize me. That's cruel, she said. It's practical, I replied. Why would I leave my future to someone who said being my spouse doesn't guide her decisions? Because I'm your wife, she whispered. Being my wife is just a title if it doesn't come with partnership, I said. She kept flipping through papers. Retirement accounts. Investment summaries. Her breathing sped up. You changed everything. We had plans. We talked about traveling, about retiring together. Then you explained that marriage didn't make me your priority, I said quietly. So I stopped planning my life around someone else's priorities. She looked at me with pure panic now. You're destroying our life. I shook my head. I'm just done building it alone. The silence that followed was unbearable. I thought I could have both, she said finally, voice breaking. Both what? I asked. My independence and my marriage. You can't, I said. But independence means being responsible for your choices. It means not expecting someone else to sacrifice while you don't. She wiped her eyes. I never thought you'd actually stop. I didn't stop caring, I said. I stopped making you my only priority when I wasn't one of yours. So what happens now? She asked. That depends on whether you want a real partnership, I said, or just the comfort of one. Weeks passed. Then one Friday evening, everything felt different again, but this time in a way I hadn't expected. That I came home to find Laura in the kitchen cooking. Not takeout, not leftovers. Cooking. She looked nervous. I canceled my book club tonight, she said quietly. Why? I asked. Because I wanted to make dinner for my husband. The words landed differently than anything she'd said in months. Over dinner, she asked about my day. Really asked. She listened. She talked about her work in terms of us instead of me. And later, she said something that mattered more than all the apologies combined. I wanted all the benefits of marriage without the responsibility, she said. I know words aren't enough. I want to show you. And she did. She started choosing. Choosing us. Turning things down. Making space. Not because I demanded it, but because she finally understood what it cost not to point one quiet Sunday morning. Months later, she said, I want to build something with you. For real this time. And that was the difference. Not promises. Not panic. Choice. Sometimes people need to feel invisible to understand what being seen really means. Sometimes they need to lose ground to understand balance. And sometimes, getting exactly what you ask for teaches you what you actually want. That if this story resonated with you, if you've ever felt taken for granted, or finally chose yourself, hit like, subscribe, and leave a comment. Your support helps more than you know, and I'd love to hear your thoughts. That I'll see you in the next story.